Hi and welcome, I'm Bill Say. In this video I want to talk about our bigger mind, our smaller mind, how we can access the big mind and some of its applications including leadership and facilitation. So let me draw something here. Call this the big mind, or well, it's a terrible B. Big mind or big self. No? Because this is really handy if we at times have experiences, like most of us, we at times have experiences where we're struggling, especially struggling to have a larger perspective. Sometimes we find ourselves in struggles where we don't feel good about ourselves, we doubt ourselves, sometimes in very fundamental ways. We just think, I'm no good, or boy, this is just... I'm just hopeless, etc. And sometimes, of course, it can be useful to criticize oneself, examine oneself, scrutinize, etc. And it's also important to remember this bigger self, as well as holding the smaller, more immediate issues and feelings and conflicts that arise for us. Now, one of the issues is, how do we access the bigger self, bigger mind? Well, there's many different ways. Sometimes people find it through walking in the woods. As one of my former teachers, John Parakos, used to say, sometimes it's just a matter of walking in the woods to rediscover, reconnect to that larger self. Sometimes people find it through athletic activities, running or playing something vigorously. People find it through making love. Other times people find it through meditation, etc. Being with people that you love and care for and feel safe with. A lot of different ways. One way that I find to be really helpful is to recall a place where you've tended to feel well. Could be a place in nature, by the ocean, in the mountains, etc. And if you've had a place where you've just tended to, wow, whenever I go there, just feel great. That could be a place that you can even imagine going to in your own mind and, in a sense, access this bigger mind. You might also think about someone's home, a friend or a family member's home. You go there, you tend to feel good, you tend to feel safe, you feel like yourself. And so that may be another kind of a linkage, another way to anchor yourself to a larger experience of who you are. So you can even try it now for a minute. I'll even do it. I could always use it, and I could use it today. It's been a little bit of a difficult day, and that's why I'm actually presenting on this today. Because I was in a smaller, more localized anxiety and conflict and self-criticism, and then I remembered, oh, this is maybe what's happening today or the last week, but there's this larger me. And when I remembered that larger me, I didn't forget the smaller part, but somehow remembering both put things in context, because the smaller me was starting to kind of run away into a sense of like feeling, less than valuable, like my pursuits weren't necessarily so useful, etc. And so remembering that larger self. Let me do it for a moment. So I'm going to recall this ocean place that I have loved to go, and I just tend to feel good when I go there. Let me think about it for a moment. I'm going to close my eyes just for a few moments. Yeah, it only took a few moments, but I noticed, actually, it was really interesting as I noticed both parts. I noticed the big part, and I noticed a little critical part that said, I don't know that this video is necessarily the most clear video. Maybe you should just redo it. But I realized that's perfect, because there it is. In a single moment, there was the smaller, more self-critical, self-doubtful part present, That's been a process that's been really pronounced this last week for me. And at the same time, just remembering this ocean-side place, I felt this bigger nature present. Wow, both of them were present. Self-critical process and the larger self that was being evoked through recalling the ocean. So you might try it for a moment now if you like. If you like, just take a couple of moments. I can lead you through it. If it's right for you, bring to mind a place where you have tended to feel really good. Could be the home of a friend or family member. Could be a place in nature. Could be a park. Could be in the mountains, in a forest, by the ocean. And I just invite you just to imagine that you are there. Take a few moments and just, even if you can imagine it a little bit, yeah, maybe you can see certain sights, maybe there's certain sounds, maybe certain smells, and importantly, even if you can imagine being there a bit, you might notice a little feeling. Maybe you feel a little bit more relaxed, more spacious, more warm. Maybe you just feel good. And while you are imagining this place, and for some people, it's really nice to imagine that in a sense, you are that place, at least a little bit, at least for a few moments. Yeah, I am the ocean, or I am that forest, or I am that energy of my friend or family member that I feel when I'm there at their home. And then from this bigger place, I'm going to assume that you're there a little bit, notice if there is something smaller happening, more immediate. And this smaller thing may have been going on for years, but it may be just going on today. Maybe something that's irritated you today, maybe something that's just angering you, upsetting you. It's not to deny it, but it's to notice it. It's there, and there's this larger mind. And you may notice that it helps somehow. Like I noticed, for example, that I felt the smaller thing, but then there's this bigger ocean thing. So notice it. And if you can imagine being this bigger energy, this bigger nature, do you have any guidance or advice for the smaller part of you? For this more local, perhaps temporary issue? May not be temporary, because many of us live with very chronic challenges, difficulties, stress, etc., that we can't so easily change. So if you notice that, you may also notice that there's a way that the bigger mind can inform the everyday self around the struggle. You may notice that it can offer a certain kind of perspective, certain amount of detachment that may help. So, to summarize, when doing inner work can be helpful, as well as looking at the more immediate issues that are going on in life, to remember there's an overarching self. There may be a bigger mind at hand that, in a sense, can hold the issues. And I'm not meaning to, I don't want to minimize in any way the severity, the seriousness of some of these things that we face in life. But what I am suggesting is that even with the grave severity of life issues that we all face at one time or another, that there may be a larger mind that can hold these experiences, that may be able to lend perspective, space, and a kind of support, maybe even a very significant support to the immediate situation at hand. One of the really challenging but really important parts of cultivating this larger mind, this larger self, is in addition to this question of how do we access this part of who we are? How do we get into that state of mind? So this other step can be quite a challenge, but it's really important if we're to continue growing, in a sense, this larger mind. So quite frequently in life, we find ourselves in some situation where we're, for example, in conflict with another person, another group, part of life. And so there's a very severe health condition, relationship problem. We're struggling with something within a geopolitical realm, etc. And some of these situations, as I just want to emphasize, can be really dire. Sometimes can be life and death. So I don't want to minimize this in any way, but what I do want to emphasize is there a mind that's, in a sense, bigger than the issue? Bigger than the part of who we are, who might be, at times, subtly or gravely impacted or influenced by the issue in question? And is the mind bigger than any disturbing element, person, policy, group, etc.? Now that's a big thing. It's not a little thing, it's a huge thing that I'm suggesting here, which is to say, is there a mind that is, in a sense, bigger than relationship problems, bigger than the family issue, bigger than the organizational or team issue? Is it bigger than the societal issues that we may be struggling with in any given moment? Because if we start to come to grips with the most difficult polarities, if we feel that we're not just over here, for example, in some level of struggle or conflict or pain, having our own point of view, but we may also be able to, in a sense, switch roles, switch sides, and find a little bit of ourself in the other, in the alienating policy, in the style of relationship that we're confronted with that bothers us in the other person, etc. Can we find a little bit of that inside ourselves so that we actually can contain the whole thing with a larger mind, a larger self? That's really the challenge here. It's a huge challenge, and yet if we're thinking about leadership, for example, within families, leadership that can hold differences, help reconcile differences in families, in relationships of different sorts, in teams, community groups, etc., it may be a factor that I can not only believe in and stand up and take my own side or my own group's side, but see a little bit of that other position, that other kind of person, that other type of group, etc. Because then our leadership, our facilitation, may be informed by something that can really hold the different parts, people, styles, perspectives, etc. And arguably, our best facilitation and leadership will occur because we're not just on one side, even in the face of really dire situations. I think our world needs more leaders and facilitators that can hold strong polarities, not just siding against. There's an important aspect to an important reason why we may need to take a stand against certain kinds of situations, maybe even certain kinds of people. And arguably, our world needs this. Someone can hold the different sides, understand them at least to some degree, and see how can we work together to address some of our larger issues in the world. So there it is. big challenge. I'll go more into another video about some of how we do this work with self and other. But for now, it's an invitation to think about smaller mind, really believing in that immediate position, perspective, etc., but maybe a bigger mind that can hold not only me, but can hold you as well. All right, there it is. Take care, and bye for now.